Hi everyone, LazyFire here. Welcome back to Battlefield 4 Multiplayer. Today we are going to be flying jets around, and if you have any sort of issues with motion sickness, this may be the video where you sit out and just read the post. Because honestly, jets and the way they move around in the world can be a little jarring to people with motion sickness issues. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Anyways, jets come in two varieties: the attack jet, which I'm flying, and the one I'm shooting at right now, and the stealth jet, which theirs just crashed into that mountain. That's that fireball off to the left there. The attack jet is meant to attack vehicles on the ground and enemy units that are on the ground, but the cannon it has on it, the 30mm, is so powerful that you actually may as well just shoot at air units too, especially the Little Bird, which you can down pretty easily. But it also comes with a secondary weapon. You'll see a glimpse of it here. It starts off with this. It is a laser guided bomb. Wait, there it is. I realized I didn't really have a shot there, so I gave up on it. But yes, the attack craft are really meant to attack ground units. The stealth jets, which are basically marked because they're more nimble and a little bit better controlling, in my opinion, they are actually meant to be air-to-air combat units, which means they don't see as much action per se as the attack jets, which have a lot more targets on the ground and in the air. But they're actually pretty useful for a couple different reasons. Unfortunately, DICE kind of hobbled them in the early game and only gave them this 20mm cannon that does almost no damage to start with. So they end up relying a lot on their heat seekers, which is their opening secondary weapon unlock. Let's talk a bit more about the attack jets. In Battlefield 3, the jets were pretty close to each other, the attack jets and the stealth or fighter jets. The attack jets, of course, were not as nimble, they couldn't turn as well, and they couldn't adjust as well, but they were pretty powerful, like equal footing in terms of power. In this game, the focus is really tilted towards the attack jets in terms of power overall. That 30mm cannon, like I said before, that's on these things by default and is the only main weapon available to the attack jets, which is notable because almost no other vehicles are in that position. Even the mobile AA that I'm shooting at now can switch up to a different type of cannon. But the cannon they have is just so powerful, and the secondary weapon they start off with, the laser guided bombs, is so useful that it's really not a point to switch to anything else. Although I have been killed by some people using heat seekers in the attack jet, these people seem to be missing the point of the attack jet, which is to rain down death on everyone who may be below you. The big thing I always find with the attack jets that can be a little off-putting is what you're seeing me do now. I am running away from a lot of fights, turning around, and then trying to kill something. That's kind of what you have to do with these things. That's how they operate. And right here you get to see the use of laser-guided bombs. Not every run is as smooth as that one was. I got two very easy shots off on him and didn't hit anything in the process, which is always good. But the reason I say that is because the vehicles that may pop smoke or use active protection will stop those bombs from hitting anyone, and it takes a little while to recharge them. So you're basically gambling that they're not going to use smoke whenever you use it. And on top of that, interestingly enough, the angle that the jets use when they're firing down towards a target on the ground is such that you often end up running into the ground or another physical object out in the world, like a mountain or a building or something like that, when you're trying to use them. So you may die in the process of keeping a lock. Philmans. That's, get used to seeing Phil's name a lot in this video when I die. He kills me a couple times that I used in this video, and a couple times on the ground actually when I wasn't flying. He is actually really good in that jet, and I have to give him his due for that one. I end up making a really bad decision later on when I'm running away from him at one point, and of course he just gets me later on too. So he's kind of the bane of my existence this time. I eventually stopped flying because I realized I was never going to be able to beat him no matter what I did. He's a better pilot than I am, which is weird to say because I've gotten a lot better in recent weeks. That guy rammed me. That's kind of a cheap way to do things. People will get kicked from servers for it. I'm not going to complain because I do it all the time. Just if I have to get a helicopter out of the air, or if I don't pull up in time to not hit something. You know, I try not to do that on purpose unless I'm trying to cause frustration for somebody who's been a dick. But yeah, for the most part, it's a cheap thing, but I can't blame that guy. He had no real recourse against me at that point. So here you'll see I immediately start pulling up as soon as I know that bomb's going to hit home. You do have to keep the lock for those laser guided. Some people will actually prefer to use what are known as Hydra rocket pods. These are the things that are mounted on, I think actually, are they Zunis or Hydras? Can't remember at the moment, with the attack jets. But you can put rocket pods on the attack jets to complement the gun instead of using those bombs. But honestly, the bombs work so much better in a lot of ways. Right here, I'm trying to avoid Phil, make him maybe crash into something by making a weird or difficult turn. And instead I end up getting myself killed because I tried to pull up a little too soon over there. I hit my tail basically on the bottom of that, or the top of the mountain. Oh well, give it another go, right? He chased me off there, but I have a pretty good area here. I can actually fly up and try to target stuff here. The guy in the rocket truck got out, so it's not really a poignant target. Switch over here and fire. Now, the big thing with both types of jets that I need to mention is countermeasures. You've seen me pop flares a couple times, and you might have noticed on the right side of that major circle there is a IR flares ready or a countdown there at all times. If I use my flares, I can make anyone who's locked onto me not able to lock onto me for a few seconds, and in addition, any rockets that are headed my way will be taken out of the air or go after one of the flares as they go off. So it's really a useful little thing to use. And the big problem with them is that in both jets they're on a 25-second cooldown timer. So you're safe for about 5 or 6 seconds, and then you have to wait 20 more seconds to get your countermeasures back. So there's this really long time where people who are reloading guns or following you or anything like that can easily hit you. It's a dangerous time. Right here I'm being chased by both the stealth and attack jet, so I had no real way of winning this fight. Even if I tried to do a turning battle, it wouldn't have been a point. So I just take my death. You'll notice that a lot of people, when I shoot them down in the rest of this video, they're already out of the jet by the time I'm able to land a killing blow. A lot of people do abandon their jets pretty early on. This is, by the way, the or the Frogfoot. It's SU-25, I want to say, and the SU-35 is the Russian stealth jet. So just keep that in mind. There are different layouts and cockpit designs and everything. What you'll notice is that the stealth jets tend to be a bit more open, a bit more easy to see everything that's going on in front of you with those, whereas the attack jets have a lot of like armor and enclosed spaces around the console and everything. I think it's a nice little distinction that they made. I can't complain about that too much. But here on Goldman, part of the reason why we're here showing off this thing is that the map is so much bigger, but it's a different map than Hainan Resort. And Hainan has mountains to go over, and it's got buildings to hide behind if you really need to, or fly around. This map is a large expanse of really nothing, and that makes it kind of dangerous for anyone who's trying not to get targeted by ground vehicles or trying to escape other air vehicles. It can make it a really, really dangerous spot. And so, for example, that attack helicopter that I was shooting at, he had to drop down, hope that whoever was firing on him would leave him alone, all this other stuff. I've got a video of me on this map where I was using a little bird and I had to hide behind a hill. That was just enough that the mobile AA couldn't see me for a while. Yeah, it's one of those maps. Now watch this thing. I clip it on my way up there. I don't take any damage, luckily, but I did hit it, and for whatever reason it died and gave me 95 points out of it, which isn't a bad deal. But yeah, some of the physics with planes in this game are really interesting. You'll see it towards the end of this video. Actually, oh, here, watch me freak out here when I'm hitting the button to switch out of the that bomber seat. I just could not hit the right buttons for a few seconds. I'm being followed by a stealth jet here. But yes, the physics on these things are weird. Sometimes telephone poles have a lot of weight to them and knock you out of the air. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you nail your friend like that. He stays up. You get knocked down. There's a thing you can do in Battlefield 3 that I kind of became a bit of an expert on. You see that guy build out there. But you could do what I like to call Marioing helicopters. And that was when you approached a helicopter, it looked like you were going to ram it or something, and then you went above it, and then hit the belly of your plane into the top of the helicopter and sent it spiraling into the ground. Oftentimes it wouldn't kill them, which is unfortunate, but it was always kind of entertaining to have somebody just get knocked right out of the air and not be able to do anything about it because you just nailed them with the bottom of your plane. It's one of those stupid things that's kind of fun when you do it. Let's put it that way. One of the things you're going to notice about that console there that the Su-35 here has is that it doesn't change whatsoever when I'm flying. I'm kind of disappointed by that. It would have been really cool if the consoles changed somehow. But almost everything is contained in the heads-up display that you see here. Now, unlike in Battlefield 3, there's kind of a unified heads-up display, which is really nice. One of the things you'll notice is that there's a crosshair on that, and it's followed closely by a circle with a couple lines through it. I've never figured out what that circle is. I think it might be like extreme angle or something like that on the cannon, but the crosshair actually tells you where your cannon is going to land on target. What I usually end up doing is using instinct, more or less, because that crosshair is kind of a dirty liar depending on distance. If you're, well, I would say more than 20 feet away or something like that, and the crosshair is telling you aim real low, what you need to do is actually aim in front of you. Yeah, not really helpful advice all the time. I think I might be mistaken on that, but that's what it seems to do. Anyways, the Frogfoot is more of a ground attack vehicle. The Su-35 here and the F-35 and all the other stealth jets are actually more or less aircraft attack vehicles. They're built to take out helicopters and such, as I mentioned before, but that main cannon it has, and I'm going to come back to this again and again, is really, really weak. You saw me take a shot at a tank there a second ago. I only did 1 point of damage in that entire run. Right here, I put an entire 20mm magazine into that helicopter and only did about 60 points of damage. If I'd done that with the A-10, I probably would have done a lot more damage. The nice thing about the stealth jets, though, is that their maneuverability really lets them take shorter runs away from targets. So if I see a guy and I want to, go back and try to help the team by shooting him down, I don't have to go 600 miles away and turn. I often do that out of habit at this point, but you can turn a little bit better, you can adjust a little bit better. What you're seeing right now, the way I'm kind of sliding the stick across the screen so I can aim somewhere else without turning or anything like that, that is, I can't remember if it's yaw or pitch. I think it's yaw, but it's one of those things that's a little bit more pronounced in the stealth jet. If you play this game, your WASD keys would be your default for that maneuver. When I play this game, I use a controller, so it's actually my left stick that allows me to kind of make these small adjustments when I'm coming after somebody. And then the right stick is going to control my pitch and how far up or down I'm going at the time. It's a bit more intuitive to me. I could not fly for the life of me with a keyboard. I thought I was like losing my mind, or I couldn't really figure out how to fly, and it just turns out that the keyboard was fucking with me. The way the keyboard is set up initially and some of the suggestions people have had have just not really worked out for me, so here I am using a controller on a PC. Oh well. And you'll see here, this is actually a little bird that I shot at, 42 points of damage, and then I get blown up by a guy way back there. He locked onto me and kept the lock. I can't complain about that. That's pretty good. That's actually a pickup weapon he has there. That's not something you can equip. So he picked that up and knew he was going to take me out, I guess. Here we are on the US side once again, flying the F-35. You can see that it has a bit more of a guarded canopy, similar to the A-10 in that regard. And unlike the Russian version of the stealth jet, which is a bit more open. I actually prefer the openness of that, but one of the big things you get with the openness on that plane is that there is a really, really significant glare that you can get sometimes. And you're going to notice it whenever I point at the sky in this video especially. The tint, the green tint that they use for the sky, or for the control screen here, gets really easily lost when you look at the sky. And this means that you're going to have to really put a lot of prediction and instinct into each one of the passes with the cannon you take at anything about the height I'm circling at. It's annoying, but it's not insurmountable. Right now, I am just trying to find any sort of target I can. I knew there was one down here, but he got blown up by our attack jet. And this is kind of the dilemma that you have with the stealth jet, this is exactly why I prefer the attack jet. There is just kind of a lack of targets a lot of the time. If you do your job right, there's probably going to be only like one or two helicopters in the air at any given time, and maybe one jet. Outside of that, it's difficult to always find targets. That was a weird amount of damage to do that via 60 points. I don't believe it. That was strange. I only fired for a second or two. I must have hit him straight on in the canopy or something. As far as I can tell, by the way, jets and helicopters do not have any sort of locational damage. So I can't headshot a jet, but the amount of damage he took there has me wondering. It's probably easier to say I probably got lucky there. And once again, he's actually going to engage me in a bit of a circling war. Not really what I'm up for right now, man. So you're noticing that I'm not really using the heat seekers here. I don't have anything against them morally. Some people do. Some people have this big crusade against anyone who will use lock-on weapons, and that's kind of, one thing is that the lock-on weapons were made so you could lock onto vehicles and people couldn't sit in the same helicopter all game. But anyways, that kind of goes beyond the point here. With heat seekers, the big thing I have against them is that the time it takes you to lock onto a vehicle with a heat seeker and maintain that lock, you probably could have actually shot him a bunch of times and done just about as much damage. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to switch to heat seekers in a lot of cases, especially if you're in a turning battle with another jet. Those are always pretty intense. One of the things you may notice right now, and I really should have mentioned it before, but there is no radar on this minimap right now. Usually when you're in a jet, your minimap gets turned into a bit of a radar, so you can always theoretically see where the other jets or helicopters in your area are. But for whatever reason, the server did not allow that to happen. So that made it a little bit more difficult to engage in these circling and turning battles that people love to do. And so I had to disengage from this guy a couple different times. He actually survives a pretty long time, despite the fact that I was working on him the entire time. And just trying to line up shots there, not so good. Like I said, with the attack jet, that would have never even been possible. Now, the fun part of this jet here, our faithful stealth jet, is that if I really wanted to, if someone put a heat seeker out on me, I may be able to outrun it if I use my afterburners. It's one of those things that was around in at least Battlefield 3, just getting out of there by activating your afterburners, but in Battlefield 4 it's a bit more pronounced because there's a lot more stuff that can hit you from a distance. This includes the lock-on weapons from the Engineer and of course the mobile anti-aircraft's radar missiles, which are really deadly. And this is kind of where the kind of boring part comes in. I'm just searching for targets that are appropriate. I know how much damage this thing doesn't do to any sort of ground-based vehicle or infantry vehicle, so I'm not even going to waste my time on that stuff right now. It's not worth it. What I would love to do someday is to actually go through and unlock all the stuff for the stealth jet. It's not because I haven't had a lot of time in the stealth jet. I probably have at least an hour or two in there. The issue is more that right now the stealth jet is not really strong enough to deal with a lot of threats. This attack jet, for example, if it got behind me, I would probably be okay. I could probably turn my way out of it, but he would probably destroy most of my health in one go. And right there, I kind of demonstrated what's really good about these stealth jets. It's that you can kind of force people to make bad decisions in their flying and flight, or you can scare people out of vehicles and stuff like that. It's not really useful as an attack vehicle right now per se, but it's got potential, which is saying a bit more than I guess I would give it initially. I really think that there's a chance that they'll buff it and make it a little bit better in the future. just not hitting this guy. Like I said, a lot of it is instinct, figuring out where he's going to be, all this other stuff. But this guy, I'm just not able to line up the shots. That's probably the most frustrating part of this whole thing, is when you're in one of these battles and you're just not able to get the shots off right. Here, he knew he was fucked, so he bailed out as soon as he could. How I make it through this entire thing is, I don't know. I think the gyro stabilizer perk I have is actually probably responsible for that. Hey, you know what we should talk about? The different abilities these things have. One, the gyro stabilizer. The gyro stabilizer is something that appears on both the attack and stealth jets, and it also appears on helicopters. If you get hit with a missile and get deactivated for a moment, vehicle mobilization kill is performed on you, let's put it that way. What you'll end up doing is kind of floating and not really able to control too well. If you do have a gyro stabilizer on, it is actually a lot more tolerable. You'll be able to survive a bit longer if you have the space to maneuver. But without it, oh boy, it can be really bad without it. Without it, you have like a 50-50 chance of surviving if you were high enough up in the air. It might move up to 75-25. But for the most part, if you're flying low and get hit with a rocket that disables you, oh, you're probably dead already. You just don't know it yet. So the gyro stabilizer makes it a lot easier to actually survive this sort of situation, and it's why I used it for so long on this thing. One of the other options you have is stealth coatings, which is actually what I had on my A10 up until today. Oh boy, here we go. Ugh. That hurts. Anyways, the stealth coatings is this ability to make any sort of lock-on weapon take longer to get a lock on you. It doesn't sound super useful for a jet, but I've been chased off by people with stingers and iglos more times than I care to admit. So it's always a good idea to have that. Buy yourself at least a few milliseconds of extra time if you can. Otherwise, the different perks or vehicle abilities for these vehicles are not anything really spectacular. There's a belt speed increase, which means when I run out of bullets in my main cannon, it takes less time for them to refill. That's about really it for that's all that's notable there. There's a couple more, like I said before, check the post, and it'll kind of give you a full rundown of everything that's in there. Much better than I could in this time. Now, the stealth jets are not completely defenseless against ground vehicles. Once again, if they upgrade their cannon, they can get a 30mm just like the A10, and there is also the ability to have dumbfire bombs, the JDAMs. These are actually pretty useful, and from what I've heard, they were really hotly anticipated. I never really played Battlefield 2, should mention that now, but they were hotly anticipated to make a comeback, and some people have said they're really great. Other people have actually said that they're complete garbage and don't use them if you want to attack ground craft. I can see that being the case, some people liking them and some people hating them. But for the most part, I don't think I'll be switching out of the Heat Seekers anytime soon for those bombs. The Heat Seekers are a pretty good setup for the attack jets, the stealth jets. They make things a little bit easier, give you a better advantage over enemies in the sky that are further away, and you can do this fun little thing with them. Back in Battlefield 3, it was pretty common to have people get really, really close to you while holding a lock on you, and then at the last second firing their rocket at their missile that's been locked onto you, and pulling away from you. That's because at a certain distance, it was actually impossible for your flares to kick in fast enough to stop a missile from hitting you. So people would use that as a tactic all the time. Very frustrating. I've only seen it once here, and that was me doing it by accident. I was locking onto somebody who turned around, and I lost the lock, and then he got closer, and I regained it right as we passed each other, and I nailed him. I felt pretty good about it at the time, but in retrospect, that was kind of like the exact thing I wasn't a huge fan of happening to me in Battlefield 3. Oh well. I can't be perfect all the time, you know. This guy here abandoned his jet once again with no damage done to it. Very strange stuff. You don't have to worry so much in this game about people stealing your jets or helicopters. Well, jets, more or less, by the way. If you played Battlefield 3, you'd know what I'm talking about. It wasn't uncommon for somebody to take one of their jets immediately at start and fly over to your airfield, hop out. Oof, how did I survive that? Hop out and then grab one of your jets and fly off, and permanently disadvantaging you. In the base game for Battlefield 4, you do not fly your jets off a runway, you take them into the map. They don't exist until you bring them onto the map. So it solves the problem of people jet stealing pretty effectively. But the Second Assault DLC actually has jets in it, and they're on runways just like they were in Battlefield 3. And oddly enough, people are just having trouble taking off with them, so I guess it doesn't happen as often as we'd like to think there, yet, at least. But now we're kind of approaching the end of this video. Right now I'm making a really dumb decision, and that is to antagonize the... there it is, the anti-aircraft gun that they brought back into their spawn. Anyways, thanks for watching everyone, I'll see you next time.